والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good? Yes, Jazakumullah khairan. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you tonight on this night of Hadeeth. The topic that I was given is not immediately pertinent to Hadeeth, but inshallah ta'ala we'll be able to make some connection between it and between the topic of the night. In some ways I'll be picking up from where Mufti Saab left off. My hope is to learn from you and to benefit from you to a significant extent from the Q&A period, which is to come afterwards, so that I hope that to a certain extent we'll be providing some background information about the topic that we're going to discuss that will be fodder, as it were, for the Q&A, during which, inshallah ta'ala, some benefit will come. May Allah accept from us and write us down amongst those who gather in His house for the purpose of making mention of Him and calling Him to the heart mind. And may He bless us and accept us from amongst those who are striving to achieve His pleasure. The topic that I was given was that of taqleed and Iktilaaf. And of course, these two concepts, which we'll define shortly, are concepts about which the scholars of the Islamic disciplines have written tomes and tomes. So what I want to try to do is try to mention some issues that are pertinent to our lived experiences, the lives that we live, and talk about some points of interface between these and related topics and real challenges that face each one of us as a Muslim living in the time and in the spaces in which we live. So alhamdulillah, all of us who believe in Allah and the last day, and who accept the truth claims of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam, and who desire to meet our Lord after we are resurrected and find that Allah Azza wa Jalla is pleased with us, and who, when our deeds are weighed and when we are taken into account as believers, we know is a necessity which cannot be avoided, we want the outcome to be favorable. And we know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam was the last of the human beings who was sent, dispatched by the Creator of the heavens and earth and all that exists, and that among the benefits associated with his being dispatched, as was the case with his brothers in prophethood and messengerhood who preceded him, is that his life example, his exemplum, is evidence against us, which makes it impossible for us to complain to our Lord on the day, "O Allah, you revealed books to human beings, but you didn't send a guide to exemplify how we should live in such a way that you will be pleased with us, so you can't take us to task." That will not be an argument that we will be able to advance on the day, because Allah has dispatched the messengers. He has revealed the books upon them, and then He has sent them to show how people like us, human beings, can make their way through time and space, can live in a way with which Allah is pleased. But Allah Azza wa Jal sent the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as Khatam al-Anbiya, the seal of the Anbiya, which among other things means the last of them, meaning that there is no Nabi after him. So our task is similar to the task of other people who belong to communities to whom a book was given and messengers were sent. What task is that? To receive the message and to pass it from generation to generation, from the generation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or the Prophet of the time, to maintain it as it was given to the messenger, and to act according to it. Now there are a number of challenges associated with this, and the Shaykh has addressed one major challenge that previous communities, by which we mean the communities of Bani Israel, the Israelites, to whom messenger after messenger was dispatched, they had to face a challenge that also the community to which another prophet from Bani Israel, Isa ibn Maryam, alayhi salatu wasalam, also had to deal with, and we also have to deal with. What challenge is this? Multiple challenges. One, human beings live and they die. They have offspring. Their offspring live longer than they did. Okay? So one challenge is what sociologists call the challenge of transmission of knowledge. How do you transfer knowledge from one generation to the next? Right? Some bodies of knowledge are so important that were it the case that every generation had to recreate the body of knowledge, there would be no advancement among societies and in cultures. This is true also for religious knowledge, by which we mean revealed knowledge, by which we mean the disciplines associated with revelation from Allah, the creator of the heavens and the earth, to human beings. Because we just understood that when Allah Azza wa Jalla sends a prophet, and particularly when He sent the last of the Anbiya, that people who live in a time other than the time of the prophet, they will not be able to say, we didn't actually meet Al-Mustafa, and therefore the Quran that was revealed to him is not evidence against us, and the orders that you sent him other than the Quran, that is his life example, the Sunnah, also are not binding orders. But rather it is a matter of agreement among the scholars of the Deen that any person to whom the message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, specifically the obligation to say La ilaha illallah Muhammadun Rasulullah, that is specifically the obligation to testify and accept that the Lord and the Creator and the heavens and the earth and all that exists is one, without partner, not to be likened to others, and that among the seal of the prophets is the final prophet Muhammad ibn Abdullah, who was a human being who lived at a certain time, has been sent to accept that truth claim and not to reject it. Any person to whom that is conveyed soundly, right, that their rejection of that is kufr, and the reward for disbelief, rejection of the invitation of Allah to salvation, is outlined in the Quran, and in fact outlined in even what remains of the books that were sent to prophets before the Prophet Muhammad. It's putting oneself at risk of divine punishment. May Allah Azza wa Jalla save you and me and those whom we love and every believer from that. So the first challenge is the challenge of how do you transmit knowledge over generations? And that's a weighty challenge. Allah has blessed us in that He has shown us the example of communities before us who have failed. And they failed in certain ways that Allah mentions in the Quran, in the book. Right? They've been distracted in certain ways, and we also, unless Allah saves us, will also be distracted. In fact, we have been distracted in some of the same ways. In fact, the hikmah, the wisdom of Allah's detailing the ways that previous communities have gone astray in the Quran is not that we rejoice and feel ourselves puffed up with pride and say, aha, look at the way that the communities before us, to whom revealed knowledge was given, went astray. We're better than them, we won't do that. The hikmah behind the detailed recounting of these qasas, of these tales in the Quran, is that Allah is blessing us by telling us not only that previous communities had made mistakes, but shown us the way that they've made the mistakes, so that we might say, with regard to our own affair, let us resolve not to make the same mistakes that previous people made. Okay? But there are other challenges as well. One of the challenges are the challenges of disagreement and diversity of opinions. Because it's a known fact that when revealed knowledge is given to communities, when a book is given and a prophet is sent and he teaches and people follow, and then they convey to people, their children who come after them, and then they do so and so forth, the way that knowledge works among human beings is that difference and disagreement arises amongst them. That's unavoidable when it comes to any body of knowledge. So, a challenge that exists and which is very present and very immediate. It sounds theoretical, but it's very present, is What's the nature of this disagreement? How do we differentiate between permissible disagreement and impermissible disagreement? How do we identify it? Why do we care? How do I as an individual, how do I as a person who may be responsible for other people, as a father, as a mother in the family, as a teacher with students, as a person who has some sort of guardianship with regard to someone else, how do I know whom to follow, how to follow them, how to know whether or not their position on such and such a matter associated with deen is reliable or authoritative, or to what extent is it authoritative, and what are the degrees and gradations that apply? Because when we're talking about deen, we have to separate deen from whim, hawa, from desire. The human heart and mind is such that it has many desires. I want to do this, I want to do that. My family, I want to do this with this, I want to do that. The people who share my language and share my culture, we'd like to do this, but we don't like to do that. The people who live in this part of the world as opposed to that part of the world, we feel inclined to do this rather than inclined to do that. Some of these variations, some of these desires, some of these inclinations are with regard to the Sharia, with regard to the path through space and time that Allah Azza wa Jal has indicated, and that the Quran, His revelations, final revelation to the final prophet, indicates are permissible. Some of them are impermissible. Some of them are required. That is, they have the ahkam of the Sharia. So how do we know? So as the Mufti has just mentioned, and as each one of you has learned, the Quran and the Sunnah, in them are adillah, the plural of dalil, indicates that point to the fact that we should believe that this thing is required for us to do. That this thing is something that we cannot do. Wajib, haram, and gradations in between. So what do we do when we find that the people of knowledge of the time in which we live, or the place where we live, disagree? Do we say all of them are wrong by virtue of the fact that they disagree about something so important? It shows that both they and the bodies of knowledge that they represent are not trustworthy. So the thing to do is to try my best as an individual to understand the Quran and Sunnah as I understand it. And then Allah will not take me to task if I follow myself and don't worry about others. Do I embark on some sort of effort to try to find the one amongst all of them who is reliable, such that I follow what he or she says and then I forget about the rest of it? Or is it possible that many of them are reliable, trustworthy, with regard to their opinion on this religious matter or that religious matter, but some of them are not? Or is it the case that the matter is very, very wide, I can follow any of them and do whatever I want to do with regard to any opinion they may have because they're all religious scholars? This issue is an issue that has been dealt with in our tradition. It's an issue that primarily falls within the realm of knowledge, which is called usul al-fiqh, right? As you know, fiqh is a discipline which is concerned with understanding and knowing what is the divinely assigned gradation associated with human actions. Do I have to do this? Do I absolutely have to avoid that action? Is this action something for which Allah will reward me? Is this action something for which Allah, unless I repent, I will be punished? Okay? It's furu' and it's usul. It's branches and it's fundaments, roots. The branches are the actual gradations that I just mentioned, right? The rulings or the ethical legal gradations. This is wajib, I have to do it. This is haram, I cannot do it. Okay? The usul al-fiqh, is a concern with studying generally how I understand the Quran and Sunnah, so to arrive at these opinions. Okay? It's an area of knowledge. It has specialists, just the way medicine has people who study it, just the way other important bodies of human concern have specialists. Okay? People spend their lives studying it. They have different gradations amongst themselves. In this literature that Allah Azza wa Jalla has blessed the members of our community to study, people have spoken about a couple of different things. They have spoken about a couple of concepts we want to discuss. One is the concept of ijtihad. Another is the concept of Iktilaaf. Another is the concept of taqleed, Another is the concept of ifta. Another is the person, the mufti, and the other person is the mustafti. We're going to talk about these very briefly, and then I'm going to convey to you, for what they're worth, nasaih, some instances of well-intentioned advice that are meant to encapsulate qawaid, principles of how you navigate some of these issues in environments such as the ones in which we find ourselves. Right? So we're going to make this, inshallah, concrete. Because I know some of this is abstract. After the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we had a group of people who met the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're called the Sahaba, right? The singular Sahabi. Who are they? They are people who met the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who believed in the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who passed away, and they were still believers, he was pleased with them. Okay? They include great names that many of us know, and names that are known maybe only to people who are ulama. Okay? After them, there are people who met and learned from the Sahaba, but who didn't meet the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They're typically called, in our nomenclature, at-tabi'un, the followers. Right? Then there, of course, are people who met them but didn't meet them, and so on and so forth. And generations, tabaqat, continue and go on and go on. Among the Sahaba, there were those who had more knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah than others. Among the Tabi'un and so on and so forth. The people who had more knowledge, particularly among the Tabi'un and then the generations and generations and generations and generations to our generations, are called ulama because that word appears in the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the well-known hadith is reported to have said, "Al-ulama warathatul anbiya." That the ulama are the inheritors of the anbiya. Right? إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاء. Allah says in the Quran before that, it is only those who are endowed with knowledge who truly fear Allah as He should be feared, the Mufassirun say. Right? The modus operandi, the way the Sahaba operated after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, is that if there was a matter that they had spoken to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam about, related to a matter of deen, they followed that matter of deen in their practice, in what they believed in their heart minds, to the day that they died. Okay? If there was a matter that they had not heard directly from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then they asked around the others of the Sahaba, did you hear the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam say anything about this matter or that matter? Okay. If there was a disagreement in what they heard, or they knew that the matter that they heard from someone who heard from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a matter in which there was subtlety, or there appeared to be an apparent contradiction between something they heard from this person and something they heard from that person, they asked those of the Sahaba who were known for their knowledge of the Quran and their knowledge of the Sunnah and their understanding thereof. First question, how do they know who the ulama of them were? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam indicated who they were. When it came to hearing the Quran, people would come from the wafud, from the delegation sent from the Arab qaba'il, from the Arab tribes, particularly towards the end of the life in the dunya of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, before he passed to Rafiq al-A'la, to the higher companionship, before he passed away. And they would ask about learning the deen, and he didn't tell them, go to any one of my Sahaba, learn from the Quran from any one of them. He would say, learn the Quran from these people, from Ubay ibn Ka'ab, learn the Quran from Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and so on and so forth. Right? He sent Ali ibn Abi Talib, karram Allah wajha, to Sana'a, to Yemen, actually, which is in Arabia Felix, to the south of Medina, as a qadi, a hakim, before he passed away. Right? He sent Mu'adh ibn Jabal, right, before that. So he sent certain of his Sahaba as teachers because of knowledge that Allah Azza wa Jal gave him that indicated that they were suitable, that they were suitable for that purpose. Which means that they had knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah that made them capable of doing so. So the Sahaba didn't forget that. And afterwards they asked people such as the Khulafa al-Rashidun, the leaders of the community after the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and people of knowledge and understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah, they would ask them for fatwa. Fatwa. That is the opinion on the person who has the capacity to be able to understand from the Quran and the Sunnah what is the hukm of the Sharia. That is, what is it that Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed as to whether or not this action is an action that I have to do, I must not do, I should not do, or it's open, I can do either one of them. Okay? And they asked, and the Tabi'un did the same, and the Atba'u Tabi'un did the same in generation after. Now, among the Sahaba, there were differences of opinion with regard to matters of deen. With regard to the usul of the deen, and the qawa'id of aqid, the aqa'id, there were no disagreements among the Sahaba. With regard to whether or not the grandfather should inherit and how much should inherit, there were disagreements among the Sahaba. These are known, they are captured and reported in the akhbar and the hadith that the Mufti Hafidhullah Ta'ala wa nafa'ana bi'ulumihi just mentioned. Okay? What does this show us? What this shows us is that this disagreement of opinion among the Sahaba and among ulama is not something unknown. We know this. We know this because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned this during his life. We know this because the Sahaba themselves, when some of them disagreed about matters of deen, and understand this point, they didn't say, wait a minute, we learned from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that there can't be any disagreements about matters of deen, so we have to work this out. We have to make one of you clear that your opinion is the correct one, and anyone else who's saying anything else, you have to make tawbah and you have to stop saying it, because what we learned from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is that there can only be one opinion, one ra'i, on every matters of deen. They did not say that. And the reason they didn't say that is that they understood and they were taught that for many things, there's an opinion which is associated with a nas, with a univocal, explicit text from the Quran and the Sunnah, about which there may be ijma', there may be agreement among the people of knowledge with regard to its meaning and what it means. But for others, because the Quran is Quranun Arabi, is an Arabic Quran, and because the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke the Arabic language, so his words, right, and accounts of his deeds and his approvals, the his approvals, taqrirat, are also in Arabic, conveyed by people who spoke Arabic, that people understand from words different things. Words and phrases indicate different things, sometimes equal potently, meaning they indicate this as strongly as they indicate that, right? That sometimes people have endowed understanding, but they have less so than other people. So there's a variation in intelligence and in capacities amongst people, right? Some people are taller, some people are shorter. Some people are more handsome, some people are less handsome. Some people run faster, some people can run more slowly. Some people are very intelligent, but there is someone even more intelligent. Okay? And sometimes there appears to be disagreement between a hadith or ayat. There's no inconsistency in the Quran. There's no inconsistency in the blessed sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But sometimes there appears to be contradiction between adillah. A famous example of this is something that you all know during the time of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, during a key battle, when it had become clear that treachery on the part of some of the allies of the believers, coming from a certain one of the tribes of Bani Israel who lived in Medina, they had betrayed the agreement into which they had entered with the other people of Medina that if people came from outside, such as the kuffar of Mecca, to attack them militarily, that they would stand together as a group against them. And in fact, they had colluded with the attackers from Mecca. So the Prophet Muhammad wanted, after Allah Azza wa Jal had allowed the believers to rebuff the attackers, he wanted to indicate to some of the Sahaba that military operations were not over, that people who were involved in one area, that they should come to another area in order to resolve things with the other group. And he said in the Hadeeth, that which means, literally in Arabic, let none of you pray Salat al-Asr other than in such and such a place. Meaning, come there. So the Sahaba disagreed during the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad when they received this message. Some of them said the literal meaning of the statement is none of us should pray Salat al-Asr until we go to the place that he told us to recoup, to get together. And others of them said the Prophet Muhammad means mubalagha, right? This is hyperbole, meant to emphasize the importance of getting there fast, but he doesn't mean that we should miss Salat al-Asr. So they stopped to pray Salat al-Asr. And when they arrived at the place, he clarified for them what he meant. But what we want to take from the hadith, and what the ulama are taking from the hadith is, he did not indicate to either one of them that they were wrong. He did not indicate either one of them was wrong. What does this mean? This means that when you're in a circumstance in which you do not have direct access to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, so that you can ask him, oh ya Rasulullah, I think that I should do this, or I should do that, so I want to clarify from you what actually you mean, which is what the Sahaba did, that one, if one has the capacity to do so, is to exert himself to the utmost, in order to understand from the Quran and the Sunnah what is meant, and that if one fulfills the conditions for being able to do so, and one is right, as the hadith indicates, إِذَا اجْتَهَدَ الْمُجْتَهِدُ فَأَصَابَ فَلَهُ أَجْرَانِ, right? وإن أخطأ في رواية فله أجر أو كما قال نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, right? And the رواية لفظ Muslim is إذا حكم الحاكم, right? When the mujtahid, when the scholar who is qualified to do so exerts himself or herself in order to come to an opinion on a matter of deen, and it happens that the opinion that he arrives at is the correct opinion, meaning on the day of judgment it will be revealed that this is the opinion that Allah, this was the course of action that Allah intended, then he will have two rewards: a reward for his effort and a reward for actually being right. But if he makes a mistake, meaning that it turns out that that's not the opinion on the day of judgment, that Allah clarifies is the opinion, he will still have a reward. The reward for exerting himself in order to arrive at the opinion. That's with regard to the mujtahid. Who's the mujtahid? The mujtahid are one of the highest order, such as the people who are the eponyms, the people after whom are named, the madhahib of felt, such as the ones you know, Imam Malik ibn Anas and Abu Hanifa, and Imam Shafi'i, Ahmed ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, and Imam Ahmed Muhammad, Ridwanullah alayhim, as well as other mujtahidun who don't have madhahib that have survived to our day. Right, such as, according to some of them, Dawood al-Zahiri, or Sufyan al-Thawri, or Ibn Jarir, and others, Tabari, right, and others, right? As well as people who may have reached a level of ijtihad, but they're still associated with and still benefit from the people who we have named, right? So Imam al-Bayhaqi or all others, according to things that people have mentioned, right? So when such people come to opinion on a given matter, and other people report their opinions and then adopt their ways of thinking about the Quran and the Sunnah, and their methodology for arriving at a conclusion and felt, and these are compiled, and people, importantly for generations after them, continue to use their methodologies in order to refine opinions, and opinions change over time. And we call this school of fiqh a madhab. Madhab appears and applies to other disciplines as well. With regard to fiqh, a madhab of fiqh, the question arises, what should be the position of a person who is not a mujtahid, right, with regard to opinion of people who have gone before? How should he or she interact with the Book of Allah, the Quran, the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as it arrives and is with us in the blessed Hadeeth of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How should he act? So what the ulama of Usul-ud-Din have said, people have two types, mujtahid and non-mujtahid. They call the non-mujtahid the muqallid. The muqallid is a person who performs taqleed. Taqleed is what? It's قبول قول القائل بلا حجة, according to one hadith. It's accepting the position of a person who has a position without knowing or without his having mentioned at the time you accept it what his opinion is. So the first thing we want to know is such a thing as permissible? So the position of the ulama of Islam is, and has been, that it's jaiz, that it's permissible. What do they mean when it says jaiz? They mean that if you belong to the group of people who have to do it, who are able to arrive at opinion independently, you're a mujtahid, then you can't do it. You have to follow your own ijtihad, particularly if it's on a matter where you've already applied your ijtihad, although there's some tafsir. But if you belong to the group of people such that you do not have knowledge from the book of the Sunnah with regard to a matter, and you have access to a person who does have knowledge of the book of the Sunnah with regard to the matter, then it's incumbent upon you to consult them, right? And if they fulfill the conditions which indicate their moral rectitude, adala, their trustworthiness, and their knowledge, it is deemed that you act according to their opinion. And it is not incumbent upon every single Muslim who has ever existed to rise to the level of ijtihad such that he or she is capable of independently arriving at an opinion on a matter of deen, thereby doing away with every single human activity, because in that case, no one can become a farmer, no one can become a merchant, no one can spend time producing food, no one can do any of the things that keep human cultures and societies extant, right? Because the entirety of life needs to be dedicated by every single person in order to independently arrive at a matter. Okay? We don't hold that with regard to deen, just the way we don't hold that with regard to medicine. Human health is very, very important. We all are concerned about it. However, we laugh at someone when it comes to taking care of the health of himself or the health of those for whom he's responsible, who doesn't consult specialists in matters of medicine, or who considers his own opinion or the opinion of his best friend or the opinion of someone who speaks the language he speaks or lives close to him or who he likes to be as authoritative as the opinion of someone who's a recognized expert in the appropriate field. Human specialization is part of the human character. So with that background, I want to deal with some rapid-fire, straightforward questions because it's a pressing matter. One, what do we do about the fact that there seem to be many different opinions? I hear one thing from my friend, another thing from the imam of one masjid, another thing from the imam of one masjid. I heard something from someone who's on TV. Sheikh Google is always available with multiple opinions. I heard something on YouTube. I think I saw an Instagram where someone had an opinion of fiqh. I was reading the Quran the day before yesterday, and an ayah that I read suggested to me that maybe I should do something with regard to the same matter. That's about 47 different positions on the matter. How do I choose amongst them? It's an obligation of the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad to cultivate amongst themselves ulama. It's an obligation for the ulama, for the Ummah to produce ulama. Okay? And it's an obligation for us, for people, to identify people whom collectively they can ask questions that pertain to a matter as important as these. So what you do is what every single Muslim who's belonged to the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has, to a certain extent, had to do in the past. One, answer the question, am I a mujtahid or not a mujtahid? If you're not a mujtahid, like most of Ummah, except for a small handful of people, then you will have access to a mujtahid. If you live in our times in which we don't think there are any ulama who reach the level of ijtihad, and it's been so for a while, what do I do? You have access to people who have access to opinions of mujtahidun. How do I know their relative strengths with regard to felt? How do I know their moral rectitude? You ask people of apparent piety, trustworthiness, seriousness, wisdom, good intent and loyalty, they mean you well. You ask who they are, and once you're plugged into a network associated with them, because they tend to know each other, one benefits from the opinions of the ulama with regard to matters that you consider to be important. Question number 2, what do I do, and we need to tread very carefully, right? But what do I do about charlatanism? What do I do about not a new phenomenon, but it's taking a different aspect, about the fact that there are people masquerading as ulama, people, juhal, people who are ignorant, such as myself, right? Who present themselves ulama, inshallah, not such as myself, because I'm not presenting myself to you as an alim, okay? Who are misleading people, they're misled and misleading others, as the Prophet Muhammad said in a hadith, talking about these people, right? Dal mudil, astray themselves and causing other people to go astray. What do I do? It's an obligation of the Ummah of the Prophet Muhammad right, to identify people who have the attributes of ulama, haqqan, right, to identify their opposites. And it's an obligation of ulama to point out and warn people against and from people who are acting as charlatans. 3, what do I do if I suspect that the ulama are corrupt? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. What do I do if I don't trust any of the ulama? I think that my opinion is superior to theirs. I think that they're poorly educated. I think they haven't gone to the college I've gone to. They don't have the degrees I've gone to. I don't find them to be impressive and reliable people. I think that if I follow them, if my family follows them, if my nation follows them, then I think things will go badly. This is a matter that goes to a shortness, a lack of understanding, and what with this, a lack of understanding on the part of the person who has the opinion. Not because each individual alim is ma'asum, is divinely protected from error. In fact, it's the opinion of us, the majority of the ummah, that ulama are human beings, they are not divinely protected from error. Right? The concepts and theory we're talking about do not require that ulama be non-humans, that they be malaika, they be protected from error. What we're talking about is we're saying that when the ulama, as a group, have reached ijma' on a matter, or when the ulama have noted that this nas from the Quran means this, or this hadith from the Sunnah means this, then when that is the case, that preferring your own opinion to the opinion of people who are noted specialists in a given matter is not consistent with the dictates of sound mind, it's not consistent with knowledge of the way humans work across space and time, and there's a good reason to feel and to suspect that it's not going to be a sufficient and satisfactory argument standing in front of Allah Azza wa Jal on the Day of Judgment when you stand in front of Him. With that, inshallah ta'ala, may Allah forgive me, we'll close and end until the time for Isha.